I am really fired up about this final week of our series that we've been calling The Church Has Left the Building. And I've been telling you guys this all month, right? That leaving the building is God's plan for us. And that the only reason we even gather in the first place is so that we can scatter. And Jesus himself, with all power and all authority, commanded us to go. And he said, as we go, wherever we go, we are to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And last week, right on Father's Day, we said that the best way that we can do this and leave a legacy is for us to actually live this life ourselves so that our kids and all who are watching us and all who will come behind us, they see the picture of our lives. And the good news is it doesn't need to be a picture of perfection because none of us are perfect. But just one of consistency in faith that we would keep trying and that we would keep going. The only way really to fail is to stop living and or to stop really believing and trusting in God. And when we do this, right, when we do what Jesus has commanded us to, the church is not just cooped up in a building, but it's sent. It's deployed, and it ends up being literally everywhere. And I've showed you this all month. I want to show you it one last time, asking that question, where's the church? Well, the church is here, and it's here, and it's here, and it's here. It's literally everywhere you are and I am. Now, last week on Father's Day, I named some names of some men at New Hope who, and just a few, it wasn't an exhaustive list of people who are really like heroes who have served Jesus and have served people here at New Hope for a long time. But even after that, I just started thinking, and I started seeing people even around town and in different places, and I started thinking, how cool is it to think how many, not just guys, but how many people. I thought of the Steinmetz brothers, who are literally here and willing to serve any weekend. We have a team of people, even during the months of this pandemic, not only the ones you see on this side of the camera up here on the worship team, but people running cameras and sound in the booth. Some of the same people who are literally here every single week for months to serve, to create this opportunity and this experience for you. What an unbelievable gift people like that are to the church. I thought of some other people. Actually, this week, Greg Dawson is on camera. I'm actually looking at him right now as I look at all you guys. And I just think of his dad, who has served our country and has served our community for so long. Bud, thank you so much for that kind of life. I think of people, Clay's here every week. I think of people like Clay and Leslie that literally forever, anytime the church has been open, are here. I think of people like Tony and Mary Colas, who have just poured into people selflessly now for literally decades of life. I think of people like Jim and Susie Culler. You guys don't know this, but how many times I come to this building and how many times this has happened over the years, and I see cars parked outside, and when I get here, I see Jim and Susie here meeting with people and investing in people and discipling people. Really, this is true of all the staff and elders and really their entire families, the ways that people of New Hope just kind of pour in to others. And it's just beautiful. But as I say that, and even as I've named some more names, right, we might think, well, that's cool, but what happens after those of us who do that are gone? And I've alluded to this a couple times just in the last month. What happens then? And I've thought about this a lot over the years, and at times it's even kind of scared me a little bit, because the coming generations, when we're looking at it statistically, just don't seem to be as consistent and as faithful in serving Jesus as the generations that are coming behind. And so what's the church going to look like with these different coming generations. And it actually reminded me of an illustration that I saw that Hugh Halter did a number of years ago. And he drew a circle. And he said, back in the 80s, we can't really see that circle great, can we? I'm going to make that circle even bigger. Is that better? Yep. So back in the 80s, right, when we thought of like our country and we thought of church, when people would get up on Sunday mornings, about 2/3 of our country would get up and go to church. They participated in the activities of the church. This is in the 80s and kind of the boom of the church growth movement. And then we got into the 2000s and things shifted a little bit. And what happened is fewer people were going to church. And so it really went from 2/3 to about 1/3 of our country. In really just 20 years or so, there was that shift where we really lost 1/3 of people who participated. This is when people started talking about things like being bivocational because the church wasn't able to pay for staff and pastors in buildings in the way that it was when 2/3 of everybody went. Now just 1/3 are going. And if things continue, what the experts say is that in the next 10 years, it's going to be more like this, that could even go away. And if something doesn't change, it could be as little as 3% of people who actually participate in church. I heard one guy say that in the next 10 years, we can expect America to be just as secular as Europe. That we would have that few people who really believed and lived these lives of faith. And so a question that many of us may have is, what does a pandemic that keeps us from gathering together literally for months do to all this? I mean, does this make that worse? Does this make things more difficult? Because this is a thought that I've had people express to me and a lot of us have wondered about. The longer we are out, less people are going to come back. I use that as a statement, but some people kind of ask that question. Rob, is it not true the longer we go without gathering together, all of us in this building on a weekend, is it not true that maybe fewer people will come back when we get to be able to come back? Because people are like, I just kind of like that. I really like being able to get up in the morning kind of lazily and wear whatever I want. Maybe that's, don't think mental pictures. Just kind of lazily go and sit in a way more comfortable chair, even though our chairs are fairly comfortable, and just, watch at my leisure. I can pause, I can have breakfast, I can do whatever. I can even watch it at a different time if I don't want to get up, right? So some people, because they've been watching online, that's just what they're going to want to do forever. And I agree that if people do that out of laziness or preference, that might become problematic. But man, how cool is it that people who are hundreds or even thousands of miles away are able to tune into church? How cool is it that maybe people who are going through sickness or couldn't really be exposed to this many people, that they have the opportunity to still participate in church? I understand the negatives to that, but this is also a gift to some people. And when I think about it, I have seen a longing of people growing, that they're saying to me, I really want to meet, I want to be able to get back, as least as much, if not more than that sense of potential apathy of people saying, well, I'll just keep doing it like this. But I admit, I'm not saying that's true. It's all speculative at this point, right? None of us really know what that looks like at this point. In an update, I want to give you guys a little update just about COVID and the coronavirus. We've had a lot of people that were sort of one step out, people from our church who have had friends or family members who have gotten the virus. We have, at least to my knowledge, our first person who is a New Hoper who comes here, who serves here, who was diagnosed, and they're doing okay. I got an update on that just today. As things have started to open, it's not just more testing. We've seen a big spike. I actually just this week talked to people, health officials from different counties, our own and some surrounding who confirmed that. I actually saw an email that an executive pastor at one of my friends' churches sent out just this week because they were thinking about maybe trying to get back to meeting this weekend in some way, shape, or form. And basically, in their counties, there's been such a huge spike that they basically sent out an email to everyone who serves saying, listen, we just, out of safety, we cannot yet do this. And in the last line, I read the email today, the last line of the executive pastor's email said, it was beautiful. He's like, I hate COVID and I want to punch it in the face. I would love, as I'm thinking right now, and this might, for some of you, you're like, are you kidding me? For others of you, you're like, I don't even know. I would love to be able to meet in some different way. Maybe in August, I would love for that. But I want you to hear this from me. We are going to prioritize our witness and the health and the safety of our people over that. We're just going to do it. And so we're going to continue to monitor things daily and weekly, and we're going to go from there. And so as we wrap up this series, I want to talk to you about how our church and how the church is in good hands. And so, Father, today, I want to ask that you would give us your eyes to see and that you would give us your ears to hear. God, we desperately need to see with your eyes and to hear with your ears. It's so easy to let others impact that, even our own thoughts and opinions and even agendas. So God, open our minds and our hearts and our eyes with your Spirit today. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So as we think about the idea of the church being in good hands, I want to start with a biblical foundation, and we're largely going to do that by looking at the interaction with the prophet Elijah and his apprentice that he picks and pours into Elisha. And so when Elijah calls Elisha, this is found in a few verses in 1 Kings 19, verses 19 through 21. This is when Elijah is calling Elisha. And I just want you to hear these three verses. I'm just going to read them over you. The text says, so Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up and he threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left the oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. And then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. So these three verses of Elijah calling Elisha are very interesting, right? To be his apprentice and ultimately his successor. Now, this didn't happen like it would happen for us, right? Where, hey, let's have a conversation and I'm going to pitch this idea to you and you're going to respond to me. No, it says that Elijah, he did this really strange thing. He went up and he threw his cloak on Elisha, and Elisha, who's literally plowing a field with a pair of oxen, literally runs after him. Just a crazy thing. And he knew what it meant, right? Like, this is what you're doing. You're calling me to do this. And basically what he says is, just let me go say my goodbyes, right? Let me go and kiss my parents and say goodbye to them before I do this thing. And the one part I want to draw our attention to there is in 1 Kings 19:20, where Elijah says this, what have I done to you? Now, this can be translated as you go kind of say your goodbyes, you do all that kind of stuff. Think about what I've just done to you. You can think about it that way, but I appreciate this sense of anguish and how the NIV translates this portion of the text. As Elijah wrestles with what he has done, what he has offered, what he has invited Elisha into. What have I done to you? You can almost read it like that. So I want you to think about the weight of the calling. Think about the weight of the calling. Listen, living with and for God on His mission is absolutely the best, most powerful, and even the most freeing way to live. It absolutely is. But it's also the heaviest way to live. Things that matter are weighty. Things that matter are heavy. Those coming after us, they don't want to be bait and switched, right? They want the full, real, weighty invitation. They don't want us to sort of say, hey, listen, this is really fun. It's so great. No, they want the real deal. I love this, right? So Elijah is calling Elisha. And what does he do? He doesn't just go kiss his parents and then wait around for them to die. No, he takes all the things that consumed his life. He kills the animals that worked the field. He burns the equipment. He literally obliterates his ability to keep doing what he's always done. And he does this brand new thing, right? And it's this powerful thing. And I see this in coming generations. They want the full, real ask. One of our core values at New Hope is contrary voice, right? We talk about that some. If you've never been to New Hope, we haven't done it for a number of months now, right? We talk about our core values, and one of them is contrary voice. We say that we like to say things that cause us to wake up. Sometimes if you want to come to a church where you're like, well, I've listened to you for a while, and I haven't disagreed with anything you've said, so I think I can go there. Listen, there's going to come a time where we're going to say stuff just to stretch ourselves and make us think that we may not even agree with, and if that is the important thing to you, this may not be the right church. I noticed something interesting. When I post stuff on Facebook that's cute pictures of kittens, I've never ever in my life posted a cute picture of a kitten. But if it's just some cutesy, nice, I love my wife, here's my family, literally, dozens of comments and hundreds of likes almost instantly. I actually posted something, shared a thing, a friend of mine that literally probably whoever would read it would be challenged and maybe even angered. And it was like crickets, 5 likes and 1 or 2 little comments. And I'm just it's amazing to me how for most of us, we just want to live happily in our ignorant little circles and never really be challenged. But I want you to hear this. As I see younger generations, millennials, the generations coming after the millennials, digital natives, I know if you're watching and you're a millennial or a digital native, I know we have given you so much garbage, right? And said all sorts of, but I just see in you guys this desire to engage and wrestle with things that are real that my generation and other generations just haven't had in the same way. And it's awesome. It literally is awesome. You think about it, right? So we had the boomers, and the boomers just worked hard like crazy just to, make a big difference. And then my generation, Generation X, came after that. And we're really the smallest generation because our parents worked hard instead of having big families, right? Because they were too busy to sort of do that. The problem with my generation is that we're really self-entitled, and when we get some success or some money, we spend it on us, and that's kind of what my generation is terrible. And as much as, again, we've sort of ripped on those younger generations that really haven't maybe quite gotten there yet, I am so thankful for your willingness to engage and wrestle with hard things. Let's look at the next passage. It's 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 15. And here's the place Elisha goes from being the apprentice of Elijah to being the man. That is not a sexist comment. If it was a woman, I would have said the woman, okay? He was just a man, so I can say that, I think. And so I want to read this passage over you because this is where that transition takes place. It says this: when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel," right? It seems like Elijah wanted to keep Elisha from having to sort of see him go. But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came to Elisha and asked, "Do you not know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you not know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak and he rolled it up and he stuck the water with it. And the water divided to the right and to the left. And the two of them crossed over on dry ground. Man, I want to be able to do that. And it says, when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I'm taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. It would have been interesting to see him miss that one, right? Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. And then he took hold of his garment and he tore it in two. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Now, where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. What a beautiful thing, right? A hard thing, sure, but it's so good. This idea of the legacy of the prophet of God continuing on. But here's the part that really strikes me. Elijah, knowing that this was going to be hard on and for Elisha, asks him, right, "Is there anything at all I can do for you?" And this was Elisha's response. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." And Elisha even says, "You've asked for a difficult thing," right? Like this is going to be hard. Because think about like how powerful Elijah was. 450 prophets of Baal were defeated, right? And you remember that story? We've talked about it a couple times here. And there's a sacrifice. They dug a trench. They doused it with these huge barrels of water. And God sent fire from heaven to consume that, right? A double portion? You want more? You think you need more? Here's what I want us to see and think about for the future, right? As we think about future generations. The future is about more, not less, right? Things build if the foundation is firm and things in general are healthy, right? They build. We're actually doing a series starting next week for the month of July called New Hope Lawn Care, right? And we're going to talk about the things that we can do to keep the spiritual lawns of our lives growing and healthy. Not only on the surface, appear to be healthy, but also underneath the foundation. So that's going to be a great thing. And even things that look like endings with God can be and are new beginnings. Some of you don't even know this. The New Hope story. There was a church that used to meet in where New Hope was born, right at the other end of our building. And it was this incredible thing where that people from that church, these faithful people who had deep, passionate, beautiful faith, would prayer walk this community believing that revival would come. And with money in the bank, at some point that church closed its doors. And they wondered maybe why God hadn't answered that prayer. And then New Hope opened in that space, and God brought revival. And I'm just crazy enough to believe that if it wasn't for the prayers of those people, New Hope would have never, ever, ever been New Hope. And I think that is incredible, right? So with God, even things that look like endings can be beginnings. And here's the thing, if you're like, Rob, I struggle with that idea about the future's about more, not less. Listen, if your theology causes you to believe that things have to, will, and even are getting worse and worse and worse, and that's just the way the world's going, doesn't that require more? Right? If things are getting worse, don't we need more? More from God, more of God? Absolutely. And then here's the scripture I want you to see. It's from John 14, verses 12 through 14. Jesus is speaking here to his disciples close to the end of his life. And he says this, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I have been doing. And they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." Now, don't miss this, because the context here is not just nice things or good works. Jesus is referring to the miraculous signs and wonders that he performed all throughout his earthly ministry. And to that, here's what he says. I want you to see these words on the screen. Whoever, right? Whoever believes in me will do the works, read miracles, I have been doing, and they will do, don't miss those words, even greater things than these. So with Elijah and Elisha, we have an isolated incident. But here Jesus makes this the way that things work. What will those who believe do? Even greater things than Jesus did. What will you and I do if we believe? Even greater things than Jesus did. What will those coming after do? Even greater things. It wasn't too long after Jesus said this and died that Peter preached. And in one day, more people followed Jesus, and the church grew bigger than at any point it ever had before. Peter grew the church in one day more than Jesus ever had. The point is this: Jesus wants to do even greater things through us than he did himself. See, we have belonging. All of us, we can belong because God the Father wants to father us. He wants us all to be his children, and we are. We have forgiveness through Jesus the Son, who died for us so that we could be forgiven for anything in our past, present, or future. And God sent the Holy Spirit to give us power to live. And so in the face of summer dips, new viruses we all want to punch in the face, and global trends, now, like every point in history, God wants to make a way and continue doing greater things in us and through us. Even in the worst moments in history, when it seemed like what God was up to was going to be snuffed out for good, he always had a remnant. He always had a remnant. What's a remnant? A remnant is a small remaining piece, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who say they love Jesus and follow him, and maybe that sort of diminishes, or there's always a small group. God has always done this. He always has a remnant. So as I was preparing for this week, I reached out to a bunch of different people who were significantly younger, and I had to make them significantly younger because I still remember, Jeremy, you probably remember this, this has been probably 7, 8 years ago now. You and Jimmy Warner and I were standing up here, and he asked me about someone. He goes, "Hey, how old is that guy?" And my response was, "I don't know. He's like our age." And he just looked at me like I had said he goes, "Our age? You're like 10 years older than me," right? So I had to pick people who were significantly younger as I was thinking about this, because we're talking about those who are coming after us. And I asked a couple simple questions. What has your involvement at New Hope meant to you? Number one. And two, if you continue to be involved in New Hope for the rest of your life, not that I'm asking for a lifetime commitment, right? What kind of difference do you think that would mean for you and for others? And some of the responses that I got were basically, "Hey, Rob, my life's really difficult right now, and I don't know that I'm in a space to answer those questions," which I thought was interesting, because there was a day this week, and I just want to say this because I just want to give all of us hope, where Bethany and I were going somewhere, and she had to do something that she didn't even know about, and so she was like walking into a situation blind with like no preparation. And I just like want everyone, like when you think, man, life is coming down on me and life is hard. Can I just say this? Life is hard, right? Like life is hard. There are things, not every day, not all the time, but life is hard. There's things that happen to all of us that are absolutely difficult. And I sort of joked, and I'm like, "Hey, you know what? Go into that situation with sunshine and duct tape. Because that's it, right? Like that's all you got sometimes." So when you feel like, "Man, my life is hard and I don't know what to do," just, do your best. And knowing that in that moment, that's all you got, that's all you can do, and it'll make a difference. I want to read you a couple answers I got from another person. They said this: "I think for me, having a place that I felt welcome and safe and loved was necessary for me to branch out and want to know what my purpose in God's kingdom actually was. If you told me 10 years ago when I got married that my spouse and I would both be serving together in ministry and raising our kids to live and love like Jesus and being part of the body in this way, I wouldn't have believed you. God's plan is funny that way. New Hope has really encouraged us to use our gifts and time to contribute to something greater." And then another answer: "I'm a big believer in you reap what you sow. The time and investment we have put into living this way has blessed us in our marriage, with our kids, friendships, and jobs, and so much more. Selfishly, I think about our kids and what it means for them to be a part of something bigger than them. As followers of Jesus, we are commanded to love God and love others. What better way is there to model that than by walking the walk and committing to serve the way we do? This is something we have to get right so that by the time they're old enough to be on their own, serving in the ways God has gifted them will already be a habit." How cool is that, right? Like people significantly younger than me saying these kinds of things. And then I want to just show you one more, because this one's more personal. My son Christopher this last week was vacationing with a friend in a different state. And I just sent those questions to him, and I'm like, "Hey, could you just make me a little video?" And Christopher's savvy with that kind of, and I thought, well, if he sends me a video and it's no good, I don't got to play it, right? I can just like edit it right out. But here's what he sent me. I want you to hear my son Christopher's answers, 14 years old, to this question. Check this out.
"Man, getting to be a part of New Hope means so much to me. Whether you're just opening the door for somebody as they walk in or anything else really, it's a huge blessing to the congregation. And if you keep doing these things over time, you can eventually lead people to Jesus, which is awesome. I mean, isn't that what it's all about?"
Who raised that kid? Right? Like, I just love that. Like, what does my son say? Like, when I ask him these questions: service, others, Jesus. Service, others, Jesus. And you know what? Like there's times where maybe he doesn't get it, but it just amazed me. And so I think about those who are coming after us. You know, I think about people like Greg and Jessica Durr who give their lives here in crazy ways to make a difference. I think of people, some of the people that I've seen Jim and Susie pouring into are people like Cody Klein and Maven Klein. And I think Cody and Maven, I don't know if you're watching this weekend, but man, like what does it look like as people have and continue to pour into you if at some point you guys are the Jim and Susie Colors who are now pouring in to others? I think about our kids, right? And that goes for a lot of us. I think of like my kids. You know, when I was thinking about younger people, I was going to say the Markles, because Laura, you're a lot younger than me, but John isn't, so... But you guys have a ton of kids, right? And so, like, you think about, and you guys have seen this on camera. Like, you've seen Roy's daughter, Jeremy's family up here. Like, you guys are like the Partridges all of a sudden, right? Like, it's just awesome. Think of Camden and the things he's done. You think of our kids and them. Listen, them and others, or them or others, the church in the future will absolutely be in good hands. And whether you believe this or not, there's one last question I want to ask you. So when we think about the church now and into the future being in good hands, the question is this: whose hands are we trusting in anyway? Whose hands? Hopefully, you're not trusting in my hands right now, right? I try to do my best, but that often doesn't add up to enough. Hopefully, you and I, we are not trusting in others for the future, for then, right? This, like everything else, is all about us trusting in Jesus. We got to trust in His hands. And I know, right? Like some of us are like, Rob, I want to, but it's hard. I really want to, but I can't right now. Rob, I really want to, but I just don't know if I can at all, ever, now or in the future. I mean, come on. Look at the hand I've been dealt. I need other people, but when I look around, there's no one else because the church has left the building, right? Like there's very few people here right now. Rob, I'm trying to deal with the pandemic, and I have even greater health concerns. I don't know if I can do that. Rob, my marriage and my family, if I'm being completely honest, are just a mess. And I get it, that now that all of us have been forced to spend even more time together, sometimes that makes things more difficult and even worse. Rob, I just can't keep all the plates spinning. And if I'm being honest, I'm like broke, so I got to keep trying to keep plates spinning because I don't even know how I'm going to make it forward. Listen, no matter what cards you've been dealt, play them. Play those cards. Just do it with Jesus and for Jesus. And when we do that and allow God to be in control, what may look to you and to me like a hand that isn't even worth playing can truly become a gift to the world. The church and your life are in good hands both now and forever, as long as those hands are the hands of God.
Have you ever thought about the cards that you've been dealt? Have you ever taken the time to examine your life as if it were a hand of cards? For many of you, you would look at the hand that you've been dealt and go, I've been given a great hand. I don't want to change a thing. And still there are others. You would look at a few of your cards and you would go, these are the hard and bitter cards. It's as if we would say, if I could just trade in these cards, my life would be so much better. But that's just it. You can't trade in the cards that you've been dealt. These are your cards, whether you like the way they feel or not. It's interesting. The people that we want validation from, the people we want to like us, the people we want to impress, we hide these uglier cards behind the more noble, significant, prettier cards. These are the cards that we want people to see. These are the cards that we've based so much our identity on. It's human nature, I guess. But deep down, we know the cards that we've been dealt. There's no escaping it. It's who we are. We can't reshuffle the deck. We can't trade any of them in. It's in our DNA. It's in our makeup. The truth is, you are all in. But what if we stopped? What if we stopped and just took some time to look at the hands that we've been dealt? Is it coincidence, or is it just life? Or is it God? The argument would be, why would an all-knowing, all-loving God give me this deck of cards? If he really loved me, why these cards? And these are the cards of pain, of chaos, of guilt, of hurts, of hang-ups, of habits. And amongst this deck, for some of you, there are some really cruel cards. Cards of rejection, depression, addiction, abuse, and the card that none of us can escape from. But if we were to stop and think back, there are some great cards in this deck. Like when you were a little kid and the first time that you made your dad laugh and he laughed so wholeheartedly, that was a great card. That was a great day. The first time you tied your shoes, your first kiss, when you graduated college and nobody said that you could do it. The first time that you used your gifts and talents and someone looked at you and you knew they meant it and said, you are good at this. And the first time you stood up for yourself. These are the pretty cards. These are the ones that we move to the front of the deck. It's a sad truth, but we really care what other people think of us. And these are the cards that we reuse, we relive, we reshuffle, because we care for validation from other people. But what does God think? What if God were to take a look at all our cards? Which ones would he choose? More than likely, they would not be the prettier, significant cards, but they would be an array of both good and bad cards. So you see, he wants to use the most heart-wrenching cards as much as he wants to use the cards that have brought you peace and joy. Don't discount the fact that God wants to use the most difficult cards, because these cards have brought blessings and they have given us the greatest learning lessons of life. To God, these aren't a bunch of good and bad cards. To God, they're just cards. And if we surrender, we can see the hand that we've been dealt. It can give God glory. It can remind us that it's not our story, but his story. And if we're really still, we can even catch a glimpse of heaven. So the question is, aren't you tired of pretending to deal with your deck of cards? Aren't you wore out trying to hide behind some of the more glamorous cards? Doesn't it shortchange God with the story of our life? To him, you have been given the greatest hand that you could ever imagine. And for me, I'm all in. I'll play the hand that I've been dealt.